All right, guys, full transparency. This month's videos were all kind of beasts in terms to edit, and it ate up a lot of my time. So this video will be a lot more relaxed. It's not really scripted. I obviously took down some notes, but it's mostly off the cuff. It'll still be on topic. It will be about Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's not really some highbrow analytical piece or anything like that. It is a highly opinionated piece if you're into that, though. This is in fact my own top 10 list of most favorite Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Now, this list isn't based on how powerful they are, it's not based on how competitively viable they are, and it's not even the cards that I necessarily own or my most valuable cards. It's really just my 10 cards that are, for whatever reason, my favorite ones, listed in a YouTube audience friendly format. So, quick overview. I've watched these shows since I was a kid, and I've played semi-competitively for a really long time, and I've been playing since a little bit after Gladiator Beast came out. So it's been a hot minute, and obviously I came in and out. Most importantly, I was out for most of the Pendulum era. I still keep myself up to date relatively to the competitive scene, but as I get older, I get more and more disconnected. But I still have an okay understanding of the modern meta. But overall, today's list isn't a competitively viable, top 10 list or top 10 archetypes or stuff like that. It's really just for my own sake here. So first, at number 10, it will be Gaia the Fierce Knight and family. Now, I've never really been a giant fan of the big names usually. So we have the Red Eyes, Blue Eyes, Dark Magician Girl, that kind of stuff. But I still, obviously, everybody has their own favorites. And for Yugi's deck, I think my favorite card is the Gaia the Fierce Knight. Technically, it's Gaia the Swift Fierce Knight, the one that actually is not like straight up a vanilla. Either way, it's just the general family, and it kind of extends to the other ones that share like the name. So the Fierce Knight first appeared in episode 1, and what I felt was really sold it to me. So first, I'm a huge fan of javelins. I think they're called javelins. It's like a spear, but it's rounded over there where your arm you hold it. It's one of the reasons why one of my favorite Digimons is Gallantmon or Dukemon, depending on whatever translation you read or watch. I really love the look, and I feel like they've done a really good job of making a Gaia the Fierce Knight, especially in Duel Links. And at the beginning of the pandemic, when I got back into Duel Links, it was one of the decks that really caught my attention. You could use it with either Yugi or the Pharaoh at the time, and it let you use this cool ass, what is essentially a modern Gaia the Dragon Champion. The one where it fused, the one that looks like it fused with Cursed of Dragon, which is another dope card in Yugi's arsenal that also is kind of undervalued, I feel. And I really love the way those two look. Obviously, it has had some variation. There's the Synchro one that's kind of just a 2600 beater, if I remember correctly. And there's also the XYZ one, which still actually sees a little bit of competitive play. It's not as good nowadays, but it still sees a tiny bit of it even nowadays, which is the Gaia Dragon, the Thunder Charger. So yeah, I really love the Gaia. It's a really cool look. It has a really neat little archetype that you can play around with. Obviously it's not like the best one ever, but it's really cool to see it. And it's even the cover art for, I believe, Rise of the Duelist, which is the one where the souped up dragon champion, the modern up version is from. So yeah, that's my number 10. Moving to number 9, it's Solemn Judgment. So this is one strange. Solemn Judgment has technically shown up in the anime, but obviously it's not like a card that you always think about. So yeah, that's completely normal. For me, this is almost here strictly for competitive play. So most of my favorite decks of all time is it has like a healthy balance of monsters, spell, traps, and of all traps, I think Solemn Judgment is probably my favorite. I believe it will actually be the only trap here. So it's a ubiquitous negate one of anything most of the time, and it's due to the nature that you pay half your life points. Technically, you always have half your life points, so it's always up to do the negates. It's not like Solemn Warning, which is a hard 2000. It's not My Body Has a Shield. It's a hard 1500, or is it 1000? So Solemn Judgment, technically always there, always viable, and it's a card that I have used a ton. It's possibly my most used trap card among my years of playing the game. so that's probably the why it's here. It also has like this little fun story with the rest of the solemn cards and the forbidden cards. So by forbidden I mean like forbidden lands, forbidden chalice, forbidden dress. It has like a little story there that's also kind of fun if you guys want to do a little bit of research. I think I've seen a few YouTubers put on like those stitch stories using the card arts, and it tells a pretty fun little story too. So but for me, it's mainly here for competitive reasons. So number 8 for me will be Caius the Shadow Monarch. Now, in the entire time of playing the game, one of my favorite decks, it's not technically an archetype, but favorite decks is the Frog Monarchs deck, which was really good for the time, for its time. Nowadays, if you want to play Monarchs, it's technically like at least 2 or 3 variants are better than the Frog Monarch variant. But Caius is the standout among all the Monarch. I think the only other good ones I might have considered was either Ryza or Mobius. Those 3 are probably probably in a little fight there of who's the best. But Caius usually makes up for most people's argument as the best. So for Caius, I believe I think all Monarchs have the same attack except for that rock one that nobody really uses. I may be wrong on that, don't quote me on it. But the effect is arguably the best. It's situationally slightly worse than other cards, but ubiquitously, it's probably the best. You could use it as a strong beater, you could use it as removal, and heck, if the guy's like 900 life points, you could also just banish itself to burn the enemy and for a game, which is fantastic. It's a card that you still see play very, very rarely nowadays, but if you play Edison format, it's one of like probably top 10 cards in that format, and it has the little awesome bat ears, and who can not like it? In terms of anime appearances, I do know it was like shown in 5Ds and Arc V, but it's never actually been technically played as a in a duel. So no real anime appearances. Number 7 will be Polymerization. To be honest, this could have been a number of fusion monsters that came up throughout the anime. So Polymerization kind of takes the spot and like plays holds for all of them. So it's one of the most used cards throughout every generation of the show. It's used in essentially every one of the generations at least once. And it was first shown in episode 1 when Kaiba opens up that suitcase to try and trade for the blue eyes, but it was actually only used in episode 5 for the first time. But long story short, this is a placeholder for most of the fusions. So all the elemental heroes, the cyber dragons, the roids. Nobody really cares about the roids, but it's all those fusion that like kind of makes up. It's hard to pick between all of them, so I'm just gonna pick like the card that binds everything together. And it's a super dope card. I love both variants. There's two card variants mostly. One you can see like this 2 weird monsters are flying towards like a vortex. Another one you just see some purple, orange and blue. I love both of them. I think they're really dope designs, and I don't necessarily have one favorite or the other. I know fusions have gone into a weird spot nowadays. I'm not gonna talk too much about it, but Polymerization, number 7. At number 6 is Dark Hole. So Dark Hole is, for me, for the longest span of my playtime, was like the ubiquitous board wipe. Mainly because Raigeki was banned for a really long time due to being one-sided, where you only take the plus without any of like Dark Holes. Dark Hole you could technically get punished because you might take off like 5 of your opponent's monsters, but you take out like 2 of yours. So it kind of balances itself in that way. But Dark Hole, it's the board wipe that I think of, and I think it looks awesome. For nowadays, I know it's not even banned, I believe. Because there's so many effects that pop off from a monster going to graveyard or from a monster being destroyed, etc., etc. So for me, I really love the way it looks, like that dark vortex. That it really looks ominous, especially if you guys have a super or an ultra version where it just reflects light a tiny bit. The way you if the line shines back, gives it like a really cosmic look, which I really love. I think I'm not sure if there's a ghost variant, but if there's a ghost one, I think that would also look pretty dope. The other rarities look good, but I think for what I'm trying to explain, if you have a super one or an ultra one, that's it really shows it off. So at number 5, that would be Green Gadget. Now, Green Gadget is also, by extension, I'm talking about Green Gadget, Red Gadget, Yellow Gadget, which was first used in the final duel between Yugi and Atem, or the Pharaoh. So for me, another one of my all-time favorite decks is Gadget Machina stuff, robot good stuff, machine good stuff. Sorry, and it's just one of the best engines. I think it's like one of the most like card advantage wise and the way that they interact each other. It's kind of like a brotherhood where one gadget grabs the other, etc., etc., and it's like this little loop. It's an awesome little engine. Even if you don't play that, you can play in a ton of stuff. You know, there's monarch variants with gadgets back in the day, and I don't think it's played nowadays because it's probably just be too slow, and there's probably cards that do exactly what it does, but easier and with little punishment if the effect gets negated, or straight up it might just have like more attack points. But for its time, it's an awesome little engine. And if you play Edison format, it's still a viable form, a viable engine in that. For me, one of my all-time favorite plays is if you have a single gadget and ultimate offering face down, you can flip it and then bang, 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 get all the monsters out, get off like a bunch of little gadget guys. And if you're in the XYZ era, you could XYZ them up. If not, you could just limit removal for game. It usually comes out of nowhere and surprises a ton of people. Really fun deck, and I really love the little engine there. Even though sometimes it bites you in the ass when you draw like 2 or more gadgets in one hand, but that's the risk you take. It kind of happens with every other card. So number four is Slifer. Slifer the Sky Dragon. So an Egyptian god was definitely going to be on this list. Slifer is arguably the coolest one design-wise. Relative power-wise, I would argue it's actually maybe the weakest. You know, I haven't really seen I haven't really had a breakdown of each one, and there's like a anime version of the card, and there's also a playable legal version of the card, and the two are kind of different. But using anime logic wise, I think it's arguably the weakest of all 3 Egyptian gods. It was first played in episode 65 by Strings, and where after the pharaoh loops him into decking himself out, he was able to actually go into the pharaoh's possession. Either way, I love its introduction. It has an awesome look. It has an awesome design. That thing where it shows like its body coming down from the sky, and it's like parts of its body is hidden by the clouds, and it's like lightning bolts, is awesome. I love the red design. The two mouths look great. The two mouths have with one mouth opening to attack and another mouth opening to use its ability to cut things attack points in half, or if I remember that correctly. Both of them are awesome, and it's a straight up awesome look. I love Slifer. The fact that it's not even like an actual Egyptian god name is also kind of funny. Not that Obelisk is either, but Slifer, if you've ever read the lore, or like not the lore, it's not that deep. It's like the reason why it's called Slifer, it's pretty funny. So yeah. All right, and then next at number 3, we're taking it a little bit down. It is Monster Reborn. So more specifically, it is the English or the international version of the art of Monster Reborn. I think the Japanese one with like I think it's called an Ankh. The teal Ankh is perfectly fine, but I prefer the weird, never really quite explained fan thingy that the international version is. So Monster Reborn is kind of like the Solemn Judgment before spells for me, and in general there are usually better spells and traps in the game, just because of the way the game works. But Monster Reborn is possibly my favorite spell card. It technically has been power crept quite a bit, but it's still a perfectly usable card. You see it every so often still in modern metas, but all things considered, it has like some of just the way it interacts with every other card is super cool. It's been part of many key moments within various animes, and like polymerization, I think it's one of the few cards that actually has appeared in almost every generation of the anime. So yeah, that's Monster Reborn. Love the card. Number 2, it is Obelisk the Tormentor. So it might have been a bamboozle. So I do think that depending on the day, Slifer is probably the better looking card, but Obelisk I just really love. So Obelisk is like, if Slifer is like an A+, Obelisk would be like an A, and then Wind Dragon Raw is like an A-, I suppose. They're all really dope cards, so it's the gap isn't that big. But for me, Obelisk is mainly my favorite card because it is also like technically right now at the time we're talking, the most competitively viable one is the Winged Dragon Raw, specifically the Sphere mode. But for me, because as a Frog Monarch enjoyer, as I explained earlier, Obelisk was like that that I played in the deck that just like if you slammed it down, it was essentially game, because if the opponent actually let me play it. It was essentially, that means I was so far ahead that they wouldn't be able to counteract it. But I love that card. It's fantastic. Even though it is nerfed a little bit in the legal playable version, it's still super dope. So it's not, you don't get infinite attack points, but it's still really cool. If I remember, the card art had like a little signature at the bottom too, which is always nice. So for me, Obelisk, like I said, it's not far off from Slifer in terms of the appearance, but the fact that it's competitively actually playable to some extent is what really pushed it over the edge. And the fact that I actually play with it, so like, also gives it a little push there. And the same way in the anime, when it first appears, it's super cool, and the way it looks, even though its name is also kind of nonsensical in terms of Egyptian gods, which Ra is the only one that actually is. Obelisk, still cool. I definitely like it. The blue giant, love it. Number 1, this might have come out of left field, but it is the Mystical Space Typhoon. Now, you might be wondering, why the fuck would you put Mystical Space Typhoon over the likes of Blue Eyes, Red Eyes, Dark Magician, Slifer, Obelisk, all the other cards? Like I said, this is a personal list. My list doesn't necessarily make sense. It's not a power level because if in terms of nowadays, it has essentially been powercraft for real. You still see Mystical Space Typhoon every so often, usually in either budget lists or in lists that really, for whatever reason, really need a lot of back row removal, spell trap removal. But Mystical Space Typhoon is the only card that I actually went out of my way to collect. Even though I have played the card game, not much of a collector. I'm the kind of guy to not pump and dump, but essentially just pick up a few cards, play with them. Oh, they get banned, hit on the ban list, sell off everything, pick something up, and then use that cash to help fund the next deck. So that's the kind of way that I enjoy the game. I should have maybe kept more of my cards because over the pandemic, especially, the card prices on average went up like a hell of a lot. Like, for example, I think for a good time, skill drains were like $10 a common, which is insane considering that I picked them up for like $2. So it definitely beats out the inflation rate. But long story short, Mystical Space Typhoon, mainly because it's available in so many rarities. So whether it be Ghost, Secret, Ultra, Super, and strangely, like some of the rarities that are technically lower on the rarity tier list, I suppose, is worth more than the ones higher simply because they're older. But I actually had a small binder. It's one of those 4x4, no, not 4x4, just 4x2. Little binders that I would pull up whenever somebody asked me for trades as a joke, and it would be all MSTs. I had one of each MST. I did end up selling it because I needed some cash to fund other stuff in my life, but it was always a fun exchange whenever I did do that. So I think I had like, because the binder itself wasn't big, it felt like a lot of MSTs because you had to flip so many pages, but essentially it was like less than 20 MSTs. But overall, it's probably my favorite card. It's competitively viable. It's appeared throughout a ton of anime episodes, I believe, similar like Monster Reborn and Polymerization. It's probably appeared in most generations, if not all generations. Like I said, I haven't checked all of them. But yeah, MST is my number 1. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said, I know this episode is a lot shorter, mainly because I just don't have the time since it was a lot of work editing. I hope you guys enjoyed this month. It was a lot of work, especially the last one where I had to cut in like a ton of episodes. Like if you saw the sheer number of things I had to cut, it'd be actually insane. And as somebody who's still kind of learning through the editing process and is not a full-time professional, I do my best. So I hope you guys are enjoying this. Thank you very much for another month. Like I said, we're switching it up. I know some people liked Dragon Ball month more. I know some people are really enjoying Yu-Gi-Oh month, but we are switching course next month. If you want to know what it is, give me a little bit of time. I still need to think about it. But this keeps me. This like programming, I suppose, lets me not get overburdened from things. And I hope you guys understand. Thank you all for watching. I hope you guys are having a wonderful 2023. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like, subscribe, or whatever in between. And yeah, have a nice one, dummies.